Hi, I'm Bill Doherty, Barnstable County Commissioner. It's my pleasure to welcome the viewers to another edition of County Chatter. County Chatter is a program that's intended to give the viewer some sense of what goes on here in Cape Cod with regard to regional programs and things that we think that people would like to know more about. With me today is Paul Wild from Elder Affairs here on Cape Cod. Welcome, Paul.
Thank you, Bill. Nice to be here. Thanks.
Paul, why don't you tell folks what exactly your title is over at Elder Affairs?
Well, I'm it's Elder Services at Cape Cod and the Islands, and I'm the Contracts and Customer Services Manager.
You're the guy that talks to people.
That's right. So I backstop the front desk, the reception team, and the three information gals that just answer the telephone and answer people's questions.
Tell folks a little bit about what Elder Affairs' mission is. I'm sorry, Elder Services.
Elder Services.
Right.
But you're right that we report to Elder Affairs. The Executive Office of Elder Affairs is a cabinet level post, and they administer the state home care programs and services for elders. And they do it through a system of nonprofit community-based agencies. So we've been around for 40 years. We have a local board of directors. They're all volunteers. It's a nonprofit, and at least 50% of our board are either senior citizens themselves or they're advocates for seniors. They work for town senior centers or something like that. So we have a federal designation as a AAA, an Area Agency on Aging, and a state designation as an Aging Service Access Point. So we run a gamut of services, not only for seniors, but by seniors. A lot of our programs are run by elders themselves, giving back to the community.
Well, one of the issues that has come up is that we are entering into what I would call one of the more trying times of the year, and there are weather events that occur during the winter time. And I thought it might be helpful for folks to know a little bit more about both the kind of preparation that they should have, both as seniors, and if you are being what I'd call a more local, not so directed or focused advocate for a particular senior, that it might be helpful to know where they could find resources with regard to preparation, especially for those who are frail elders still living at home. There becomes questions as well for folks that are more robust, that might have animals that that might need to be taken care of. And there's the issue of how do you connect with, let's say, the support services that would be available, and also how long do you need to have resources on hand to be prepared for until, let's say, the regular emergency planning folks get into place. So with that as a docket, get started.
So that's a simple, easy question. Let's start at the end and go backwards. I think the basic is at 3 days. You should be able to be independent and self-sustaining for at least 3 days. Now, I think the big theme that people should take away from today is planning, because every single situation is a little different. And if you go through your plans ahead of time, when the news starts talking about an impending weather event, you'll probably be a little less nervous. Let's talk about someone who's very frail and would have to go to a shelter. There are 3 shelters generally on Cape Cod in the 3 regions, middle, up, and lower. And generally the Regional Transit Authority has services, bus services, to each of the shelters. So my suggestion is that you call a Cape Cod Regional Transit Authority now and pre-arrange your transportation to the shelter before the event happens. Now, for those who plan to stay...
Oh, and by the way, I might mention, since I'm on that board, that we are very open to getting those calls, and that there are people that will answer the phone to be more than happy to tell you what type of preparation you need, numbers that you should call in the case of an emergency. And the last event that we had, I think it was about, is it 2 years ago now, that drivers stayed on duty and arranged to go and pick folks up, but there was that need of being able to contact the RTA in order to get that
Exactly.
connection.
You don't want to wait till your street is unplowed and
Right.
impassable to call the shelter. So you should call right away. Now, each of the shelters can serve at least 1,000 people. And I believe the one in the Mid-Cape at Dennis Yarmouth accepts pets as well.
Yes, as a matter of fact, so people would know, they had gotten a grant to get a whole bunch of these cages, so that so that if you bring your pet with you, there is a place for the pet to go. Now, understand.
Yes.
You don't keep the pet with you in the shelter, okay? But you can take the pet with you.
Yes,
To
and
find
you'll
a
be able
place.
to go out every once in a while and
Exactly.
look at it and check on them. But
And also
you can't
feed 'em
bring
and all of that, right.
Exactly,
Yeah.
but you won't be able to bring that
Right.
pet in with where the other humans are. However, the shelters, people are resistant to go to them because it doesn't sound like a really great place. But my 90-year-old mother, who just moved this week to assisted living, mostly because she was living independently here in Dennis, she still drives. But when the weather came up, even though she had a really great wood stove and lots of lanterns and flashlights and canned goods, and she was a little nervous being all by herself. So she would go ahead and go to the shelter ahead of time. And when she moved to assisted living and the intake lady said she would no longer have to worry about that, she said, "Oh, I like going to the shelter." They really treated her very, very well there. So I think it's a good idea to plan that ahead of time. But for those people who are going to stick it out at home, once again, planning is critical. You want to make sure you have cash. If there's going to be a power outage for a long time, the banks will be closed and the ATM machines won't work. So you need to get cash ahead of time. You should fill the tank of your car. Because you don't know how long the pumps will be out because those pumps are electric. The idea of having batteries and flashlights and lanterns, not candles, because candles are pretty dangerous.
And by the way, people should know that with technology, LEDs are very low on battery consumption
Yes,
and very
they last
high
a
on
long
illumination.
time. Exactly, and
Yeah.
you can get these lanterns all around here on Cape Cod. So you should get lighting. You should be aware of your heat. Some heat doesn't work with electricity. So if your heat is out for several days, you're going to have to probably move.
Well, that's true. I happen to live in a typical old Cape Cod cottage, and we looked into say improving our fireplace, and we discovered that in order to bring it up to code, we'd have to move all of the furniture out of the small living room that we had in order to use it.
Wow.
So it wasn't really a solution.
Yeah.
And although they have sleeves and they have inserts and things like that, there is a requirement that you have furniture so many feet away from the edge of the fireplace, so that you would not you not be concerned about let's say raising the temperature in the room. And I have to say that a warning that people should accept is that just because they have a fireplace in the house does not mean that automatically can throw wood into it.
No, exactly. That fireplace needs to be inspected, and the chimney needs to make sure there's no holes in it and there's no creosote buildup, because you could, especially if you don't use the stove a lot or the fireplace, and you light a fire in there, and you have a problem. Well, you don't want to find out you have a problem when you're in the middle of a blizzard or a hurricane. Many people nowadays do get generators. I have a breathing problem, and I had to go to the shelter once because the power went out, and I needed something to press my breathing device into. So I have since had a generator installed. Now that's not cheap, but it comes on automatically when the power goes out.
Those are the kind that are whole house, right?
That's right, the
Okay,
whole
so-
house. It will take care of not only my breathing device, but also my furnace in the winter or my air conditioner in the summer.
Okay, so that would be, let's see, a typical base load in a house for electricity would be about 5 kilowatts, I think, if memory
Yeah, I think
serves.
mine's an 8 kilowatt,
Okay.
and I got it at Home Depot for about $2,500, but that didn't include installation.
Right. Now, and that particular one requires requires fuel, which means you have to go outside in order to put gas in.
But you can hook it up to the gas line. That's
so
what
you-
mine is.
with the
Mine's hooked
propane.
up to the, it's not propane, it's gas,
natural gas.
So
Okay.
it's hooked into the pipe from the street. So there's unlimited fuel for it.
Okay, so
And
so
it starts once a week and diagnoses itself and charges its little battery automatically. And quite frankly, it was a lot of money. I think between the cost of the installation, it was about $4,000. But the relief of not being worried when I hear that there's a weather event coming up, because I really would worry about that. And I mean, I did they were very nice at the shelter that I did go to, but I found it very difficult to get restful sleep there.
now when you mentioned the cost and the installation and the source of fuel for it, a lot of, and this is something I want to emphasize to seniors, is that buying a generator that costs, let's say, $300 or $400, and assuming that will take care of what's going on, doesn't take into account let's say the responsibility for not just maintaining it but supporting it, which means you have to go outside to put the fuel in, and you have
Exactly.
to
and they get ferociously hot.
Oh yeah. The other point that you made, which was very important, and this goes back to when I was a maintenance officer wearing the funny green suit in the Army, was the preventive maintenance of checking it on a regular basis, not just every 6 months, but at least on a monthly basis, to make sure that it was operating properly. Because we found in the last event that there were several shelters that had generators that didn't work, or only worked for a short period of time, because they had not had maintenance performed on them. Now, we've since addressed that. Okay, but let's get a little bit on what we should tell seniors and advocates for seniors to stay at home. What specifically should they do to prepare themselves as far as food and let's say an alternate means of keeping warm?
Well, as I say, each situation is different. So if the power does go out and your heat is dependent on the power, you should be ready to evacuate the house. So first of all, prepare for staying there, but also prepare to move if you have to. So that means packing things up in a bag ahead of time. Now,
the bag.
Many people have a bag ready to go, because you don't want to have to run around once you've decided you can no longer stay at home. You've discovered that your car is snowed in, and you're going to have to call 911 and hope the police can help you get out. You want to be able to grab, and you need your medications.
Oh, the medication is so important.
That's
In
right.
the last event, there were many people that came to the shelter without their medication, and that is crucial, especially because there's no resources, there's no pharmacy at the shelter if you go to the shelter. So it's important that in preparation for an event that you're well supplied. That bug out bag, as they say.
The bug out bag. That's a good word. Now, people should turn to their local council on aging, their local senior center. There's one in every town.
Yes, there is.
And many of these senior centers have the bug out bags already ready for you, or they have a bag and a list of what you need to put in it. So we're doing an overview today,
Yes.
not specific. But if you want specific advice of what exactly you need to put in your bug out bag and what you'd have at home, we've talked about having cash, having the car filled, having light, but not a candle, batteries or lamps, food, shelf-stable food like tuna, but you also may need a can opener. Some people no longer have a hand can opener in the house.
I know that we do, and I think we got it for that reason.
And yeah, you want to make sure it works.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you buy one of those at a discount house and they'll only open 3 or 4 cans before they twist. So don't cheap out on a can opener. You should also have a family plan so that if you have relatives living off Cape, they are aware of what your plans are, because they're going to be worried about you. There's a lot of seniors on the Cape with children far away that worry about them every time they hear a blizzard coming up.
Well, I am a senior, and I do have, and all of my children, the one that lives on the Cape is in Katamet, and I live in Harwich, so...
Oh, that's not close.
It's not close, and the one daughter is in Groton, Mass, and our son is down in Georgia, so which means that in order to get a hold of us, they have to use the phone. And one of the things that I found is that we need to keep an analog phone in the house, because the phones that we have that make life so easy, the wireless phones, are operated by battery.
Ah, that's a very good point. This is where a landline pays for it. Many people are giving up landlines because they seem expensive, but many times when the power goes out, the telephone still works. Mostly when the power goes out, the telephone works.
No, there's a difference between the wireless phone that uses a satellite on the landline that comes in and a cell phone. We're not suggesting that the cell phone wouldn't work. However, several years ago, we found out that the cell phone towers need to have their own supply of energy, and that their battery backup only lasted for, I think it was like about 12 hours, and then the cell phone tower went out. So the cell phone is an alternative, but not as reliable as having, I think you can get them at Radio Shack. I think they still sell them, or I think I got one at the dump. And that, and all it was just it was compatible with being picked up, being connected to a copper line, and the copper line, of course, has there's a 30-volt signal on it that that maintains enough of a potential so that you can pick it up, and it was a lifesaver in terms of keeping in touch with people when we had it, and I would sincerely recommend it to anybody that because it's really short money. You're not talking about more than about maybe $20 or $30 to have something that it's time to put it. It's time to connect the analog phone. Digital is wonderful in terms of clarity, but it does have the limitation that fiber does not have its own operation without a battery that's operating with it.
Well, and you talked about kids spread out all over the country. Sometimes it's good to organize a telephone tree so that every single person isn't calling you to try to check on you. The local person checks on you and then calls all the siblings. No, because that can be a little confusing if who's calling who and who's been checking up on who.
That's something else that I don't think we spend enough time on. You mentioned going to the Council on Aging. There's another thing that we need to advise seniors to do, is that they should have someone that is, I want to use the word responsible, for checking up on them during an emergency, that has their name. I know that many of the Council on Aging have a list of people that are frail, and that that they check up on. And I know that the police department and our EMTs, in each one of the towns, has sort of a general awareness of who needs support in an emergency. But it wouldn't hurt, as part of the planning process, if they would call the Council on Aging and say, I'd like to put my name on a list that somebody would call me if there's an outage, or somebody that I can call at the Council on Aging to, let's say, to
They're making a very good point, Bill. And you don't necessarily have to stop at the Council on Aging. The local police, if you're disabled or you might have special needs, especially in a hurricane or a blizzard, the police would love to know that ahead of time.
Oh, yes.
Because they're the ones that also plan ahead of time, and they would check up on you and find out if you need a ride to the shelter. So both the Council on Aging and the police would be interested in you pre-registering with them.
Now,
if you want to know where your Council on Aging is, you can just call us, Elder Services.
There you go.
Because we have all of the numbers.
What is your phone number?
We have an 800 number, toll-free number here in Massachusetts. It's 800-244-4630. That's 800-244-4630. And we're open 9 to 5 business days. And our information department is there to answer questions. They could probably send you a list that you could check on, a checklist of what to have in the house. They can give you the number for your local senior center. They can give you the non-emergency number for your local police station. You don't want to call 911 just to pre-register that you might have special needs. As a matter of fact, there's also a 911 disability indicator.
Is there?
So that if you dial 911, they can see that you're dialing from a telephone that's coded with someone with a special need. And that's something you can prearrange ahead of time.
Well, I think
and
that's
that wouldn't
important
be necessarily a weather emergency.
Yeah.
That could be for anyone.
Well, I think that's important for people to know because I think that the thing that concerns people that are living alone is well, when the kids were growing up and everybody was running in and out, there was no need of worrying about who do I turn to, and
Neighborhoods are stronger then.
Yeah, well, here in the Cape we have neighborhoods, but a lot of us are living along a long street. Or we're living.
Or we moved here late in life and didn't know the neighbors yet, or.
And all of that. I remember that when we had we'd been living here for quite a while, and our son was still in high school when we moved here. So we met people because when you have a kid in the school system, you meet all the other parents in the school system. It really helps as far as making that neighborhood connection. But many of us are. Let's see, we've gone through the cycle of retiring to the Cape, splitting our time between the Cape and someplace warmer in the wintertime, coming back here because we can't really do that anymore, because as we get older, our resources tend to diminish, so that what we could do let's say in the beginning of our retirement is reduced. The other part is that the concern that I think we all have that who's going to be around to help us out if we're moving back and moving back and forth. So there's that. So all of this takes, I guess, addresses the idea that when we reach a certain age in life, we also reach a certain a certain point where we have to start considering that our life is really changed, and that as we respond to an emergency, there's not a lot of people we can call up to help, let's say to help us out. We have to help ourselves out.
That's right. You have to raise your hand.
Yeah.
You have to raise your hand. And once you raise your hand, people will be there to help you. For instance, you were describing we've seen that because Elder Services of Cape Cod serves a lot of elders in this very elder county. It's one of the most concentrated senior citizens areas in the country outside Florida. And yeah, as we age, we have a tendency to lose certain abilities. But there are services and products and technologies to accommodate that. So just because you can no longer do for yourself doesn't mean you can't get the help in.
Paul, I always maintain that inside we're all the same. We never changed.
That's right.
Okay, but sometimes we have to recognize that our bodies are not kept up with our attitude with regard to let's say the fact that inside we're always the same person that was 14 years old and had a lot of get up and go and ambition.
Well, we're very good about that on Cape Cod. We're very independent. We're very self-sustaining. We don't like to take charity. We don't take handouts. But these products and services are things that people have paid their taxes for. So
that's the thing we have to remind people about.
They paid into the system, and that's why they did it. We do this a lot. Quite frankly, I'm more willing to try to help someone who's resisting in getting services than someone who doesn't need the services but demands them anyway.
Well, that's the entitlement attitude that
exactly.
People have, yeah.
And I have to say, I'm very grateful we don't have that entitlement attitude here. Instead, our problem is getting people to accept the services that they deserve and stay safe.
Okay, well, I think that one of the things that we look forward to in our sunset years is an opportunity to enjoy that time. And I guess that if I wanted to get a point across, that that I wanted people to let's say to accept and understand, is that elder services and what elder services does is intended to support the needs of seniors, and it's not something that is a foundation or a charity as much as it's something that is actually connected with both with the federal, the state, and the local government as far as taxes that have been paid to set this up. Of course, I don't want to go into the part where why are we cutting back on Meals on Wheels and things like that.
Yeah.
Because I know that when when I see Leslie, and we talk about this, that that the county has always been there for that.
Yes, you have.
As much as
We're
possible.
very grateful for that.
Okay, so but getting back to the main thing that we're trying to get across to people is that we are now in the winter season, and as we are in the winter season, there is that time when we have to take a look at where we are. That when I used to give the frostbite lecture when I was in the Army, it was always, you've got to keep dry, don't get wet, because if you're dry, you can get warm. And there are many ways of getting warm: sweaters, blankets, sleeping bags if you have them. You have to be very careful of fires. You have to be extremely careful that candlelight might be romantic, but it's certainly not it's certainly not to give you the light that you need to protect yourselves. And that the time to start looking at putting that stuff together is now. You already mentioned about the Council on Aging in the local community. You can put them in touch with that through Elder Services.
Mm-hmm. And I think we want to re-emphasize that it's better for you to ask for help than to get yourself into a situation where you need even more help than you did when you could have asked for it.
Well, that reminds me.
Because everyone gets older, hopefully.
Oh, yeah.
Everyone ages, and we get a little frailer as we get older. That happens. That's the way the human body works. So that's why we have taxes, so that you pay into it before, when you don't need it, so that when you do need it, supportive services like Meals on Wheels or other services like consultation on what to do in an emergency, those are all for you to take.
Okay, well, what is the final takeaway that you want to have people have from this program?
I think the final takeaway is think about your situation and be realistic. If there is 3 feet of icy snow in your front yard, are you going to fall down going to get your mail and cause a big problem? Or would it have been easier to accept help before the snow started?
Well, it reminds me of what a surgeon said to me once when I worked my way through college in a city hospital. And he said, the shame of it is that people will not address an infection in their finger until it becomes a question of losing the arm. So I think this is the advice that I would want people to take to heart, is to take advantage of the time when you can participate in, let's say, in your need, and avoid the time when you need total support. So,
well, and us guys, it's a little harder for us. We're not easy. We don't ask for help easily. We're uncomfortable with that.
Exactly right.
We feel we must be strong, that we must be self-reliant, but I think being more realistic is actually more helpful to everyone.
And I think we'll end on that note. So with me today was Paul Wild, who was the
Contracts and Customer Service
representative at Elder Services here on the Cape. And I'm Bill Doherty, Barnstable County Commissioner, and you have been watching County Chatter.